Hello and welcome to the first annual Pirate TV Oscars prediction show. I'm Cooper Tennant, and today my panel of guests and I will be discussing what we wanted from the Oscars, what we got from the Oscars, and who we hope walks home with the gold come Sunday night. Like I said, it's not just me up here. We've also got Greg Mehlin and Cameron Boss. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. I'm very excited for the Oscars. I've been looking into predictions and analyzing it for a while, so excited to see if stuff that I want to win wins and just all that.
Couldn't agree more. I've watched so many good movies this year, and I'm excited to see what happens to them.
Okay, well, let's jump straight into our predictions with original score. All right, so the nominees are Joker, Little Woman, Alexandra Desplat, Marriage Story, Randy Newman, 1917, Thomas Newman, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, John Williams. Me personally, I think that Joker, with the woman who I can't pronounce her name, I think she deserves to win. She also did Chernobyl, which has an amazing score. But when I think of Joker, a lot of the times I think of the soundtrack to it. But the way that the score kind of weaves in and out with the actual action is very Oscar deserving, in my opinion.
Sorry, Greg. I totally agree with this. I think the music for Joker was phenomenal. I think it perfectly mirrored Joaquin's character. His mannerisms, his expressions, and what he had going on in his head was perfectly reflected by how skittery the music was.
Yes, I also believe, and I believe that her name is pronounced Hildur Guðnadóttir, and I think that she will deservingly win. Her score elevates every moment that music is playing, and that's what a good score should do. I personally believe that second only to Joaquin Phoenix's performance, she was the best part of that movie.
I agree.
I
Totally
could
agree.
also imagine, though, that Thomas Newman's work for 1917 could pull off a win if they really love that movie, because Thomas Newman is like one of the most acclaimed composers working today in cinema, and many believe that he's overdue, and this could be the movie to do it. But I do believe that Joker will end up taking it, though.
Well-deserved.
Speaking of well-acclaimed, John Williams is nominated for an Oscar this year. Yeah. But I felt like his score for The Rise of Skywalker didn't really feature any new or interesting songs. It was a lot of rehashings of old ones, which are still amazing, like top class. But I feel like, Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker doesn't really deserve an Oscar nom for score. I would have much rather seen something like Uncut Gems with its, synth-heavy, very droning score.
Yes, I definitely get where you're coming from. Rise of Skywalker's score is good, but it's not something that really stuck with me. It's the least memorable score of the series, and again, it's still John Williams doing what he does best. But I do agree, Uncut Gems had a great score. I would have liked to see that nominated.
Okay.
Agreed.
Moving on to adapted screenplay, we have The Irishman, Steven Zaillian, Jojo Rabbit, Taika Waititi, Joker, Todd Phillips, Little Woman, Greta Gerwig, and The Two Popes, Anthony McCartan. For me here, I have Jojo Rabbit, or Taika Waititi, winning for adapted screenplay. I feel like Joker, the writing was a little shoddy at parts, and most of the reason why I feel like I like that movie so much is more of Joaquin Phoenix's ability to turn writing that maybe isn't super great and make it into something that is genuinely an Oscar-worthy performance, I guess. So,
The way I see it, I'm also going to go with Jojo Rabbit for a different reason. I thought Jojo Rabbit, occasionally its strengths was in the female character, the sister character, if you will. I thought the way her lines were written gave her a lot of power, especially in the first third of the film, and I thought that was very good because it matches the entire introduction of her character, such a powerful character, thematically, especially given the time period and everything that's going on in the film. I thought it was very smart to have the character's lines be just as powerful as her introduction.
Yes, I also am predicting Jojo Rabbit, and before I go on with that, I will also agree with what you said about Joker. I think the screenplay was the weakest portion of that movie. It's not bad, but there are a few moments that feel a little bit clumsy in a way, I guess. But Jojo Rabbit, I thought, was something so different and bold, and it's hilarious, it's heartbreaking, it covers so many bases. I would love to see it win, and I think it's going to. It's had a good run with precursors. I do think that Greta Gerwig's script for Little Women could be a threat, though. It's very well written, and it's very timely as well. Jojo Rabbit is also timely, I believe. But I will go with Jojo Rabbit for this. And also, I will say that Greta Gerwig's script, despite being very good, it has one major flaw, which was the anachronistic order of the film, which I thought detracted from the character arcs by showing them out of order. I would have preferred to see it how it was written, actually, and I feel like the film would have been superior that way.
Okay, interesting. Moving on to original screenplay, the nominees are Knives Out, Rian Johnson; Marriage Story, Noah Baumbach; 1917, Sam Mendes and Christy Wilson Cairns; Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino; and Parasite, Bong Joon-ho. Personally, I think Knives Out should have been nominated for more awards, which it wasn't. But just to appease my love for Rian Johnson, I did give Rian Johnson the Oscar for Knives Out. Just the way he takes the typical whodunit and kind of flips it on its head and gives it an entire new story by basically revealing the killer at the very beginning and making them the protagonist, I thought was extremely compelling for me.
It's a very solid take, Cooper. I'm going to have to give the award to a different artist here. I'm going to give it straight to Bong for Parasite. I thought Parasite, at first, I thought it was absolutely great. And then I learned that the screenplay was actually just based off a true story from his own past, that he himself was an intruder in someone's home, for lack of spoilers, and he's experienced some of the certain things you'd see in the movie as well, and had a similar plan to the one that plays out in the movie. So I thought to take a real-life experience and make it seem so surreal like the way it happened in Parasite over time in the movie, gotta give kudos where kudos are due.
All right. I agree. Parasite is a fantastic script. I think it'll be a very deserving winner, which I do think will happen, because much like what I said about Jojo Rabbit, it is so unique, I think. You don't see many films like that. It blends so many genres effortlessly, I think, and I think it'll be very deserving. I would also be very happy, but I won't predict it, if Marriage Story won in this category, because I think that was the film this year that emotionally resonated with me the most out of all of them. I thought that the characters, it all felt so real and touching and tragic, and so I would love if that won, but Parasite is just as worthy, and I think that that'll take it.
Okay. Moving on from there, we are going to film editing now. The nominees being Ford v. Ferrari, Michael McCusker, and Andrew Buckland; The Irishman, Thelma Schoonmaker; Jojo Rabbit, Tom Eagles; Joker, Jeff Groth; and Parasite, Yang Jinmo. This one was tough for me. Film editing is something that I kind of have an eye for in terms of, the best editing is editing you don't see. Kind of surprised that 1917 isn't on this list, just because the whole movie's edited to make it look like one take. But personally, I would give it to Ford v. Ferrari. I'm not a massive car guy, but something about the way the race scenes were put together in Ford v. Ferrari was very compelling to me.
Couldn't agree more. Start your engines. It's got to go to Ford versus Ferrari.
Yes, I third that. Ford versus Ferrari, the racing sequences are so exhilarating, and again, I'm also not a car guy, but there was something about it that just felt so thrilling to me. I loved it. I will say I wasn't very surprised, though, that 1917 didn't get nominated, because the editing was very good, but there are just so few edits in it. I think that was what killed its chances. Sort of like what happened to Birdman a few years ago, another all one-take thing. With good editing, it all looks like it. You never really break that spell, but when there's so few cuts, I think that really harms the film's chances.
I see.
I could, though, imagine Parasite might be able to take it, though. Ford vs. Ferrari should, but Parasite's, it has several sequences that I think are just really well edited, and like the framing of everything, like you feel everything that's going on, you never lose sight of it. Best one, I think, is the flood scene, where there's so many things
gorgeous.
happening there, and
Gorgeous
it's a wonderful moment. But I do give my personal vote and my prediction to Ford vs. Ferrari.
I agree. All right, moving on. Another one of my favorites, cinematography. We have The Irishman, Rodrigo Prieto, Joker, Lawrence Sher, The Lighthouse, Yaron Blastich, 1917, Roger Deakins, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Robert Richardson. Now, going into this, I thought that I would have given it to 1917 because Roger Deakins is my personal favorite cinematographer. He's worked with Alfonso Cuarón. He's worked on movies like Blade Runner, 2049, Skyfall, Sicario, No Country for Old Men, and that's just a few of his 80 cinematography credits on his IMDb. I personally think that he will be the man that makes cinematography extremely popular in the mainstream, not amongst us. But I'm going to have to give it to The Lighthouse, Yaron Blastich, just because I feel like The Lighthouse was another movie that was extremely snubbed in every category it could have been nominated for, I think. But something about the aspect ratio, using black and white, and just the very bleak sets that they created for that movie just looks so good on the screen. And Yaron does an amazing job, I think, setting up the shots.
Listen, as soon as you're done watching this video, just go watch The Lighthouse. Do yourself a favor. This movie was, in of itself, phenomenal. Personally, I think it was snubbed for Best Feature Film.
I agree.
But the cinematography is out of this world. Everything cinematography-wise in this movie is compacted into one big, bleak square. You are on the island with them, and you can clearly see exactly what was designed for this movie. And not just see it, but feel it too in the performances by the actors. And you can also hear so many things in that film as well that just add to the level of cinematography that's being achieved. You can see the horror, you can feel the horror, you can imagine it. Couldn't ask for a better cinematography piece of just pure art.
I have yet to see The Lighthouse. I will get on it because I hear great things. But, and I do hear especially about the cinematography. Even people who didn't like it say it's fantastic. But for me, of what I've seen, it has to be 1917. And I don't think that this is any competition at all. 1917 is going to take it. I'm certain of that because the first thing that everybody talks about with that movie is how it's shot. Like, you just can't separate it. And it's so impressive how they did it. I don't know how Roger Deakins was able to do that, and I would be outraged if he did not win it because what he did was absolutely spectacular, I thought.
Yeah, that ending shot of the main character running across with explosions everywhere.
Yes.
It's beautiful. It's truly beautiful. Moving on to our acting categories. Supporting actor, we have Tom Hanks, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Anthony Hopkins in The Two Popes, Al Pacino in The Irishman, Joe Pesci in The Irishman, and Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I loved seeing Joe Pesci in The Irishman. He hasn't acted in many years. It was amazing to have him back. In The Two Popes, I felt Anthony Hopkins kind of felt like Anthony Hopkins playing an old version of himself. The Two Popes is a great movie, but I feel like he wasn't the reason as to why you should watch it. His co-star is much better in the movie, I think. But I'm going to have to give it to Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. For whatever reason, I had always seen Brad Pitt as that dude from World War Z. Even though I've seen him in tons of other movies where he's fantastic. But along with this movie and Ad Astra, which was also released this year, which I think he could have been nominated for Best Actor for, I think his acting chops in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood proved it to me, especially the ending fight scene where he's high off of LSD and beating up a bunch of Manson family members.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is going to take this award from me as well. Brad Pitt, it's rough because for this category, he got a great character to play. This guy is just totally nonchalant, totally keeping it cool, and I think Brad Pitt was a perfect choice for it. We've very rarely, it's been a while since we've seen Brad Pitt play such a chillaxed role, but to make that perfect chillax ratio maxed out with just this cool, effortless look and performance, I got to give credit where it's due. I loved the fact that his delivery seemed realistic when he was denying a lot of the influences in the story as well, whether it was the young female character that was involved or the rivals he was fighting at the end, the Manson family. I thought he just gave a realistic performance, even when he was talking to a dog. Everything about his performance was totally realistic, and I loved it.
First off, with the mention of the dog, that dog was fantastic.
I think that dog might deserve an Oscar.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. That dog was the third best performance in that movie. But yes, Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is absolutely stellar. It is just such a perfect part for him. I can't see anyone else doing it. I will say, though, I'm a stickler for actors being in the right category, and I think that Brad Pitt is a leading role in that. His role is that much smaller than Leonardo DiCaprio's part, and Leo is in lead, and I think that he has an unfair advantage of being in supporting here. I would personally like to see Al Pacino winning for The Irishman. I haven't seen him act in something like this in a long time, and it was very welcome. I thought he absolutely killed it. I thought he was just on fire. But I think that he and Joe Pesci are definitely going to split the vote. So I think Brad Pitt is a very safe pick for this category.
I do think that The Irishman could easily, either of those categories, or either of those actors could easily take the Oscar here. Moving on to supporting actress, we have Kathy Bates and Richard Jewell, Laura Dern in Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson in Jojo Rabbit, Florence Pugh in Little Women, and Margot Robbie in Bombshell. Personally, I'm going to give it to Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit. Her performance leading up to, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers for this, but her performance leading up to what eventually happens absolutely kills me anytime I watch the movie. First time I watched it, I was met with a mix, this specific scene, I was met with a mix of confusion and sadness, and I genuinely started crying in the movie theater, just once it kind of hits you, like what has happened. So Scarlett Johansson's knocks all the other actors out of the park for me.
My vote is also going to ScarJo for this one, simply because this performance for her was such a breath of fresh air. I mean, come on. We have been watching Black Widow, and I'm going to watch Black Widow this year. It was just so different. I was so welcome and more engaged in this character for Scarlett Johansson than I have been in so long for any of her roles, given they're all so similar. I feel like I'd watch Black Widow in so many movies, but this one was a whole different character, this great motherly figure, a mother we wish, I mean, come on, Mother of the Year in my opinion.
Of the nominees, Scarlett Johansson would also get my vote. I thought she was just a wonderfully heartwarming character in it, but I do think that she's going to be hurt by the fact that she's nominated for both this and Marriage Story, and I think that people are going to sort of split the vote on that, of which they would prefer to see her win. I actually really wanted Thomasin McKenzie from Jojo Rabbit to also be nominated. I thought that she played a great part, a sort of victim who nevertheless feels much stronger than the average person that you see in that role. But my personal winner actually is someone who also is not nominated, Zhao Shushan for The Farewell, who is a similar part to Scarlett Johansson's role, another tragic, heartwarming, motherly figure. This is a grandmother in this movie, and she was just funny and sympathetic and just so, really just touches your heart. But I also will say, I think that Laura Dern is winning this for Marriage Story. She's gotten all the big precursors, and I think that she has a big narrative with, she's been in a lot of great work these past few years, and I think that that's going to translate to a win for her, similar to a case such as Matthew McConaughey when he won.
I definitely wouldn't be opposed with Laura Dern winning. Moving on to lead actor now, we have Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory, Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Adam Driver in Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix in Joker, and Jonathan Pryce in The Two Popes. Now, this might have been, I think, my most difficult category. All of them deliver outstanding roles, but just to narrow them down, I thought Leonardo DiCaprio's performance was amazing because it's Leonardo DiCaprio, but I did feel like Brad Pitt did a better job acting in that movie than he did. Like you said, I do think Brad Pitt could have been nominated for lead actor. Joaquin Phoenix, I felt like it was obviously an amazing performance that genuinely made the movie for me, but I feel like it was kind of expected from an actor of his caliber. And Jonathan Pryce in The Two Popes. If you haven't seen The Two Popes, I highly recommend you see it. That one has not been getting enough love as I believe it deserves. He's a British actor who plays a man from Argentina flawlessly. He nails the accent. He nails every little bit about speaking Argentinian, and it's really unbelievable. But my Oscar is going to go to Adam Driver for Marriage Story. I believe that since Adam Driver was cast in Star Wars, he's proved himself time and time again that he is the best thing to come out of the sequel trilogy.
No doubt.
I will agree with that statement. Adam Driver definitely is the best thing out of that trilogy. But there is nothing funny about Joaquin Phoenix's role in Joker. And there's even less funny about how serious I am about this man taking home that gold. Absolutely, this is probably my favorite Joker performance ever. And yes, I really do mean ever. A close second being Heath Ledger. Hot take all around, yeah. But Joaquin Phoenix absolutely nailed what would go on inside of the Joker's mind, performed it perfectly, and if you don't believe me, just watch the apartment scene where that man has to open the door. Just watch that. You know what? Give it 2 watches. Watch that twice, then come discuss it with me.
I think that Joaquin Phoenix will win this. It'll be a very deserving win. He's one of the best actors working today. I will say also, Heath Ledger to me is by far the best Joker. And Joaquin's version is very different though, so it is sort of apples and oranges, but Heath Ledger is the best for me. I think that this is the strongest lineup of the entire show. All 5 of these men delivered absolutely stellar turns. Antonio Banderas, he's just heartbreaking in that movie. It's such a stoic performance that you don't usually see something like that up for it. Jonathan Pryce is, again, another just warm figure and like such a well-known person. Like to bring them down and make them feel so human too is very impressive. My personal vote would go for Adam Driver, who I think just had such an emotional resonance to me. Like he's a very flawed person in it, but you just root for him because you see how much he's suffering throughout that. Just how much he's been hurt and broken, and it's so amazing. Also, he sings Stephen Sondheim, and I'm a huge Sondheim fan, so there's that. I do think I loved Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think that he is the weak link of this, and that says something not about his quality, the enormous quality of the others. I would have loved to see Taron Egerton get it, or possibly a Roman Griffin Davis for Jojo Rabbit, or George Mackay for 1917, especially Egerton, but all 3 of them were people who I thought, like, those films were entirely in their hands. If they weren't good, the entire picture would fall apart, and I think that they would have been very deserving. There were many other deserving people, though.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to lead actress. We have Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan for Little Woman, Charlize Theron for Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger for Judy. I think I'm going to have to give it to Scarlett Johansson again. I think she's going to pull off 2 in one night for Marriage Story. I feel like you can't give an Oscar to Driver without also giving it to Johansson, because both of their roles are so entwined that I feel like if both of them didn't give the best performance of their lives, the movie wouldn't have nearly have been as good as it was. So I'm going with Scarlett Johansson.
I am also going with Scarlett Johansson. Similar to the reasoning I had before, Scarlett Johansson is a great actress. It's just that she's been stuck in Black Widow for so long. It's rare that we get to see her break out of that. She totally broke out of it with a very entertaining character, very, very varying character as well. So I think it's going to go to Scarlett.
I loved Scarlett Johansson's work in that. I do feel that she, in a way though, I thought that Adam Driver was the one where I walked out of that movie and he was the one that really wowed me, but she was fantastic though, just because I preferred him doesn't take away from her performance. What I think will win and what I think would be my personal pick would be Renee Zellweger for Judy, and I think that Judy is not a good movie. It's very generic, but her performance as Judy Garland in it she just completely elevates it. I thought if it weren't for how good she was, that movie would just be such a bore, and I think that she really captured this icon while still being able to make it her own thing. I also give credit to Charlize Theron, who I don't think has much of a chance of winning because, again, there's the fact that she's playing Megyn Kelly, who's a very controversial person. I'm sure a lot of people would not want to see her as a character win an Oscar, but Charlize Theron really dug deep and really found the character there. Another flawed person who is engaging, and she just got all the look, the makeup for it was fantastic, but her voice, it was all great. So.
I definitely wouldn't be opposed to that. Okay, down to the final two. Nominees for directing are Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, Todd Phillips, Joker, Sam Mendes, 1917, Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Bong Joon-ho for Parasite. I feel like both Scorsese and Tarantino's films are kind of drowning in their personal touches. At some points, it was a little bit much for me, both their editing style and just the way that they film. I felt like Todd Phillips being nominated as Best Director was a little weird to me, at least, because, like I said before, I feel like the movie's made by Joaquin Phoenix. It's a movie that Todd Phillips wrote and directed, and I feel like he might have affected the outcome the least. So I'm going to have to give it to Parasite, just because it felt like every single thing that the director wanted me to feel throughout the movie, I felt. It was almost as if he was sitting next to me, and anytime something would come up and I would be like, oh my God, like I can't believe this is happening, it's almost like he was looking at me and smiling and being like, yeah, that, I just did that. So it was extremely touching for me, and I feel like Bong Joon-ho should definitely get it for directing.
I loved Parasite. Parasite was amazing, and the directing, too, is also just as great. I think Parasite's strengths when it comes to directing really shine towards the end. When directing, you should ask yourself, how do I want to tell the story in terms of what I want to build on the frame? It might not be what you want to see on the frame, but maybe what you want to build in it. And I think Parasite is a great example of that, especially at the ending. What happens to the son character, the way they shot that, the choices that were made to shoot were great. However, I'm not going to give the award to Parasite. It hurts me not to, because that movie is incredible, but I have to give it to 1917. I thought that there were bigger, bolder, and more successful risks taken in 1917 in terms of directing, all the choices that were made for it, and the ability to storytell were all big risks in that movie. You had characters with such drastic actions, with drastic shots, and everything worked out in the end. And the directing, I think, lends to that. Shots of trees and peace and nature when there's peace in the film. Shots of disgust and war-torn areas in sections of the film that are clearly directorial choices to do so. It almost felt like the set of 1917 was a playground for the director, and that's why I have to give it to Sam Mendes for 1917.
I could not agree more. Bong Joon-ho would be so deserving. In almost any other year this decade, he would definitely be my vote, but what Sam Mendes did, it's just, how do you do something like that? It's what you said, a playground for the director. That is so true, what he did just visually, but the visuals translate into this pure emotion too. You're just in it with those characters, and he's a big reason to thank for that. I will defend Todd Phillips for what you said. Joker, I was not as big on Joker as general audiences were, but I think that his direction, because it extends to all these different parts, that all the technical stuff is brilliant. It's just that the script isn't that great, and I think that all that raised it, especially Joaquin Phoenix's performance, but I think that Todd Phillips is partially to thank for that, and also partially to thank for all these other great technical elements in it too. And I will also say with Scorsese and Tarantino, it is sort of like we've seen them do this kind of stuff before, but they still do it really well. There's no denying that. But yes, my vote is for Sam Mendes, and I think that he will win very deservingly.
Okay. Moving on to the big one, the Best Picture category. Your nominees are Ford v. Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Now, Ford v. Ferrari, I really enjoyed, but it felt a little bit like a dad movie, something to sit down with the family.
I watched it with my dad.
Yeah, it's a dad
Good barbecue movie. Great barbecue movie.
For sure. That's not knocking it at all either, because it's a very good movie.
It's the best barbecue movie.
It's the best dad movie I've seen, I'll say. I'm a little surprised Joker was nominated just because I didn't think that the Academy was going to nominate a comic book movie, especially with Scorsese recently coming out and saying that he compares comic book movies to theme park rides, which I don't completely agree with him there.
I
But
love Scorsese. I disagree with him on that.
yeah, as do I. But personally, my winner is going to have to be Marriage Story. I think I did not expect to want Marriage Story to win before seeing it. I thought that I was going to give it to Parasite or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just because they're more
Call me.
they're more like, I guess, Hollywood movies. But man, Marriage Story, something about it, like it's basically, I mean, going back to the theme park thing, it's almost a roller coaster where you throughout the movie you're constantly going through ups and downs, and in the end you think it's not possibly going to end the way you want it to. And while it still ends sad, it ends on somewhat of an optimistic note, which I think just completely sells it for me. Everything about it is just perfect in my eyes.
Somebody, please grab Cooper a Kleenex box. Because I disagree. I think it's Joker. It's got to be Joker for me. Joaquin Phoenix, there's a time that we have encountered where someone's performance was just so good that it really made the movie that good. This is a very difficult category, 100%. You've got a lot of good movies stacked up against here, but come on, it's the Joker, baby. I mean, the Joker. I mean, the Joker's performance from the trailer, you might have thought, oh, this will be a good movie. But there's not a single person I've seen that left that movie thinking it was anything less than beyond good. It was great. Joaquin Phoenix totally just broke everyone's mind watching his break as well. So many situations that the movie lends itself to for the Joker's character. You see the Joker always doing these big terrorism-inspired events and everything, but this was a totally different iteration of it. It makes previous performances even better.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we haven't seen a movie that's tied to connected movies like Star Wars, for example,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's been rare that we've encountered a movie that makes other movies even better because that one was so good, and that's why I'm gonna give it to Joker. This monumental nuclear film.
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. My vote is for Marriage Story, which again, you said it's like an emotional roller coaster. No movie this year made me feel more than that, which I think with Joker, there's a lot to love there actually, but it didn't make as much of a real connection with me as other films nominated here. I also would love to see Jojo Rabbit win because, like I said, it's just something. You don't see films like that, and I would love for it to be rewarded. It was so good. That and Marriage Story, it's very close. Marriage Story just edges it out a bit because it's just, there's just some indescribable pureness to it, I think. There's so much to love there, and it includes my favorite performance of the year by Adam Driver and another one of my favorites by Scarlett Johansson. And I just think it's smart, it's sad, it's just so many things. That's my personal vote.
Yeah, I definitely would not be upset at any of these winning Best Picture. Moving on, we've gone through all of our predictions. Now we're going to go through some movies that we saw this year that we thought deserved at least an Oscar nomination, if not an Oscar themselves. I've got a list of a couple here. Some of them were nominated, but I felt like they could have been nominated for more. First off, I have The Lighthouse. I definitely think this could have been nominated for Best Picture, nominated for production design. They built, the interior of this lighthouse, by hand, and over the course of the movie, they destroy it, and they end up still using the same set. Screenplay is fantastic. I would recommend it a read if you haven't. And the biggest snub from The Lighthouse, in my opinion, is Willem Dafoe. The fact he wasn't nominated for supporting actor in a movie such as this is appalling to me. If you've seen the movie, I could immediately say the word hark, and you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. It's such a stellar movie, and it's such a smart horror film. I'm not surprised it's not nominated for more because the Academy really does not like horror movies. But man, it's such a shame that it wasn't.
I could not possibly agree more with you, Cooper. The Lighthouse is It's a decade definer. Absolutely, I would give it a 10 out of 10. Willem Dafoe is astronomically good in this movie. It's crazy. He is so versatile, and then you see him take all of his versatility and put it into one role. And not to mention, you did a great job pointing out the set in the lighthouse. They absolutely destroy that set, but they keep going with it. They kept going with it, and the characters are the part of the set that really gets destroyed the most. Robert Pattinson absolutely gets destroyed in this film, and this film explores it perfectly. And then Willem Dafoe as this chaotic pirate thing it's so great. It's so great. And there's so many shots in the lighthouse alone, just frames and frames that are just 10 out of 10. So many shots that need more recognition. Please go watch that movie.
Well, the movie that I thought got it worst in terms of snubs was The Farewell. I mentioned before that Zhao Shuzhen would be by far my favorite to win the Oscar if she was nominated. But I also think Awkwafina gave an amazing leading performance here. It was something that is so different from what I think we think of when we think of Awkwafina. But she was just such a heartbreaking and internalized performance, very different from her. The script is very gentle. It's like it pulls off the mix of comedy and drama perfectly, I think, because there are so many scenes that make you tear up so badly, but then there are scenes that are just legitimately hilarious, I think, because the situation in this film is just so awkward that you can't help but find some humor in it. So I definitely think it should have been up for Best Picture, Actress, Supporting Actress, and Screenplay.
Yeah, a movie that wasn't nominated for any Oscars that I think could have been nominated for just about everyone was Uncut Gems. Adam Sandler delivers an Oscar-worthy performance in this movie. The man who was famous on SNL for just having enough money to make crappy movies with his friends delivers with the help of the directing duo of the Savy brothers. Just such a good performance. Like I said, the score is extremely synth-heavy, kind of 80s aesthetic, that VHS almost, I guess. It definitely could have been nominated for Best Picture. The sound editing, I think, is also really good. The movie's so chaotic, and I feel like sound has such an impact in the movie. The movie gave me a stress headache as I was watching it. The last basketball game that you're watching, where so much money is laying on this, and both his life as well. I've never cared more about a basketball game, I don't think, in my entire life. Just a couple more quick snubs. I think Rocketman could have been nominated for something, cinematography even. Knives Out could have been nominated for Best Picture, editing and directing. Us, I think Lupita Nyong'o did an amazing job acting both the main character and the main antagonist. Ad Astra could have been nominated for sound editing. And Dolomite Is My Name is another movie that I think could have been nominated for screenplay. And Eddie Murphy could have been nominated for Best Actor. Do you guys have any more snubs?
I don't know if this is a snub. I feel like Avengers Endgame might have maybe snuck in maybe just one more category. The category it is nominated for, I think it's very well deserving. Visuals. I mean, we've gone over Thanos before and what it takes to make that big purple monster. That is a lot of work, and I think it's good to see that Thanos is still getting some recognition for how difficult it is to put on Thanos and the hundreds of thousands of portals they opened up in that movie. I mean, come on.
So you mentioned Knives Out. That's another one I would have loved to see that get some more recognition. I'm very happy that it got the screenplay nod, but I don't know, that's a movie where it just, like the whole cast, it just meshes together so well. Talking about cast, I find it very interesting that Parasite won the Screen Actors Guild Award for Best Ensemble, and yet none of the actors were nominated, and I think that that's a crime. Song Kang-ho, I think, was phenomenal in that as the father. I also thought Cho Yeo-jeong, I think her name is, who is the other family's mother, was very, very funny in that, and really engaging as, not to a cartoonish extent. It was a good realistic example of that. I thought that those would have been two great acting nominations. I also thought with Jojo Rabbit. I mentioned I would have liked to see Thomas and Mackenzie nominated. I actually would have liked to see Taika Waititi nominated because that is such a weird role to do, and he was hilarious in it. That's the funniest thing I've seen all year. Sam Rockwell also would have been a great nominee for it too, but Taika Waititi, what he did there is just so hilarious.
I agree. All right, moving on from the Oscars, we're now going to take a look at a couple of movies that we think we might like in 2020. We'll do one each, I believe. My number one most anticipated movie for me is Dune, from the creator of Blade Runner 2025. The cast in this is incredible. I haven't read the book, Yevon, but the director alone is enough to excite me for the Dune adaptation.
For me, it's got to be Black Widow. I just want to see where the MCU goes next, and it looks like they're going in an interesting direction. Very good cast for Black Widow. I don't know what they're going to do with Florence. I don't know what they're going to do with my man from Stranger Things, Chief Hawkins. Who knows? But I'm interested.
I'm really looking forward to West Side Story, and I'm not a big remake guy, but I think that even though the original film is a great film, there still is a lot that you could do with it, and it's got Steven Spielberg directing, my favorite director. It also has Tony Kushner writing it, and he's a brilliant writer, and the cast is great. You got Ansel Elgort, who's a great up-and-comer, and then a lot of theater people, people who, a lot of times in musicals, they cast people who cannot sing, and that's a big problem. And they got some good people here, several Tony nominees, including Mike Feist from Dear Evan Hansen. I'm a huge fan of his. But yes, I'm really looking forward to that. I hope that it's just as good as the first film.
Well, I think that about wraps it up here for the Pirate TV Oscar Prediction Show. Thank you so much for watching. One more thing, we'd like you to watch Cats in theaters now. And that'll about wrap things up. Thank you so much.
See you on the red carpet.
Indeed.